Hello, everybody. I am so excited to be here. This is my first Instagram live of a series that we are starting. So, this is called the Resistance Room. And the whole goal of this is to kind of I'm thrilled to be here. I'll be talking to different health clinicians, different policy experts, all different people. And here's my first guest. Yay. Hi, Anne.
Hi,
How are you?
good. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we met first. You came out here last year in Detroit. There was a Democratic Women's Leadership Forum, and you sat on a panel there. And I have just loved you ever since. And I'm an OBGYN PA and started speaking out. A similar reason as you is that there's just so much mis and disinformation out there. And it's only getting worse, of course.
Every single day it's getting worse. That is
Every
accurate.
every single day, it's a different hellscape that we find ourselves in, that's for sure. So, just wanted to hear a little bit more from you. I'm really excited. This conversation prompted me to launch what I'm calling the Resistance Room, and I'm going to invite different advocates, different people running for office, different clinicians to kind of come on and just have conversations to really show people what community building looks like in real time and how easy it can be to have conversations and just say, hey, how do we make this world better for us, for our kids, for our community members? And so you're the perfect person. So tell me more about your journey and your Set It campaign, pediatrician, all of the amazing things.
Yes, I am embarking on a quest to become the first pediatrician in the U.S. Senate in
Woo!
2026. And silver lining of that is I'll also be able to retire Lindsey Graham, who's been in the U.S. Senate for 22 years. But yeah, I'm a pediatrician and a mom of three school-age kids. I never, ever, ever envisioned I would be a political candidate. I still don't consider myself a politician. I'm a public servant. But when you work at a children's hospital for the nearly 2 decades that I've worked at children's hospitals, you start to understand that our broken political system is harming our kids and families long before they ever get to the doors of a children's hospital. So I was doing, the work of a pediatrician at a children's hospital in South Carolina for 15 years, got fed up with the problems my kids and their families were facing. And I looked to my state capital in Columbia. I looked to Washington, D.C. I didn't see a lot of folks fighting for our kids and families. And then back in 2021, I made the audacious decision to run against our nation's most embarrassing Congresswoman, Nancy Mace, in South Carolina's first district. I did not win that race, but I think far more importantly, I didn't go away. I've been fighting in South Carolina every day since. And about 5 months ago, I decided to go after Lindsey Graham's job because all the reasons I ran against Nancy Mace have grown more urgent by the day. Never been a more important time for healthcare providers to step up and run and get ourselves in rooms where decisions are being made.
Yeah. Yeah, whew, man. I mean, it has become only more and more grim, like every single day. And obviously, we saw Trump get elected last year, and then we saw RFK be appointed. And it feels like there's so much distrust that's being woven into the healthcare system. So, as someone who's been a clinician for as long as you have, what's one word of advice that you would give to people right now? How can they lean into their healthcare? What should they be doing? What should they be looking at? Where should they be researching? All of those things.
It's a really scary time to be a patient. It's a scary time to be a parent in this country. We used to be able to turn to and trust institutions like the CDC. We used to be able to trust the words that came out of the Secretary of Health and Human Services' mouth, regardless of who was in the White House. They would appoint someone serious and qualified to that position. RFK Jr. is nothing more than a grifter and conspiracy theorist who himself has personally benefited significantly financially especially from his peddling of anti-vaccine conspiracy theories for decades. He's been the arch nemesis of pediatricians in this country for a very long time. And when he was nominated to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, that was really the straw that broke the camel's back for my decision to run for the US Senate in 2026. Because never in a million years did I think that he would be leading our nation's healthcare system and our public health system. And the damage he has done already by injecting politics and distrust into our nation's public health infrastructure will take us decades to recover from, even if he were to resign today, which we know he won't because he's an arrogant man who believes he is far more qualified for the job he has than he actually is.
Yeah, I mean, this distrust has been going on for a while, right? We saw obviously in Trump's first term that the COVID pandemic had started, and he was saying things like inject yourself with Clorox to get rid of the COVID, right? Like these ridiculous concepts have really spurred this anyone can be a medical influencer online. And so we've been seeing so much of these like health and wellness influencers. And as a clinician, I felt like I always had people coming in asking me questions, which made me so happy that they would bring me questions because I always wanted everyone to feel safe enough to ask me whatever ridiculous thing that they saw, whether, you know, in OBGYN, it was, should I put yogurt in my vagina to get rid of my yeast infection, which for the record, you should not, all the way up to, you know, I saw this birth control information online and is there truth to this? And I think that's one thing that's really scary, like you said, for everyone right now is really doing your due diligence to figure out what's real, what's evidence backed, and especially as we're seeing kind of some of these larger institutions that were the source of evidence-based information kind of sinking from underneath us. Where are you recommending parents to go to? Where are you recommending community members to go to for health information in the midst of all this?
I think we need to turn to our individual healthcare providers first and lean on that relationship that you have built with your individual providers and know that they are going to provide you with the most accurate evidence-based information as they always have. Specifically for parents, I think we can continue to turn to healthychildren.org, which is the parent-facing part of the American Academy of Pediatrics. The American Academy of Pediatrics is laser focused on promoting the evidence-based routine childhood immunization schedule that the CDC has basically abandoned. And so we're going to have to turn to our nation's large medical organizations and our individual providers in this moment. And, you know, I think, you know, pivoting to how we get out of this is we all have to find a way to engage. We can't be reactive any longer as healthcare professionals. You know, I learned a lot of hard lessons in my evolution from bedside healthcare provider, which I still am. I have an overnight shift tonight, but I learned a lot in my evolution from providing healthcare for individual patients to getting engaged in advocacy, then to ultimately deciding to run for political office, because I understand that we know the answers to our nation's biggest healthcare problems, to our nation's biggest, you know, public safety problems. We know the answers. We have policy solutions, but we don't have enough elected leaders who have the moral courage to pass the policies, to pass the laws that we need to promote the health and safety of every American. So as healthcare providers who are tired of seeing our profession come under attack, we have to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone, recognizing that along with that, that will bring discomfort, that will bring risk on individual providers when we choose to speak up, but there has never been a more urgent time to do so. And, you know, I think so many of us who work in healthcare forget the level of expertise that we have because we spend all day around other people with similar expertise. Yeah. But people out there don't have the expertise, the clinical experience that we do. And it's our duty as healthcare providers to share what we see, to share what we understand as the impact of these horrific Trump administration policies on the provision of healthcare in this country, to share it with the voters out there, and to get involved helping candidates who care about these things get elected up and down the ballot next month in November 2025, and then again in November 2026.
Yeah. That's so important. Now, aside from obviously the incredible credentials you have as a pediatrician, how does being a mom inform your desire to run?
I love that question. I would never, ever, ever if I wasn't a mother. You know, I have three kids. They are 13, 11, and almost 9. My almost 9-year-old was born 6 days before Donald Trump was elected in 2016. And that night was a huge wake up call for me because I had put my older daughter to bed, said, "You're going to wake up with the first female president." And, you know, we had this really great moment together. Then I went back to my newborn daughter, was nursing her off and on all night. And as I watched the returns come in from that election, I was just devastated. And of course, I had like newborn mom brain fog. And I just looked at her beautiful face and thought, oh my God, what kind of world did I bring you into? And it was in that moment that something inside of me kind of like a switch flipped. And I recognized I was going to have to get actively involved in creating the country and the world that I know that my 3 children deserve and all 73 million children in this country deserve. And, you know, I like to say this because I think there's a big misconception about the type of person who's qualified to run for office or who can be an effective candidate. I am an introvert. I am like the classic introvert. I hate talking on the phone. I used to hate public speaking. I didn't like being the center of attention, but I was so driven to create the future for my children and all the children in South Carolina and in this country that I just shed all of those insecurities. I learned how to do hard things as women can, as healthcare providers can, and I've put myself in this position to be a vocal advocate for our nation's children and families.
Yeah. It's so interesting. A lot of my story resonates with that. So I found out I was pregnant with my first son. I found out it was a boy on the same day that the Me Too movement started. And I remember feeling like, how am I going to raise a boy in this world? How do I want to teach a boy to be in this world? And then my daughter was born in May 2020, peak COVID. And then my youngest son was born in 2022. And I was at his 4-week appointment when the Roe versus Wade Supreme Court case was leaked. And I remember being like, oh my God. And I spent my entire maternity leave collecting ballot signatures because I'm in the state of Michigan where we were the first citizen-led ballot initiative. So I just trucked my little infant around in his carrier and, you know, got petitions signed. And I think I've seen interviews with you where you say, you know, it's so frustrating when people say, well, what are your kids doing when you're on the campaign trail, and kind of like poo poo you as a mom. And I think there's so much power in motherhood if we flipped that script a little bit and instead being like, hey, why are you running? You're a mom and you have 3 kids. It's, hey, you're running, you have 3 kids. What a freaking superpower that is, right? Like how much we've learned, how we can multitask, how we understand the nuances of how much is messed up in our system, of how bad childcare is, of how hard it is to, you know, have unpaid maternity leaves, like all of these different things that are so fundamentally flawed in the US. If you're not a mother, you may know those things, but you don't really get those things. And I think it's such an interesting thing when we shit on moms who are doing things outside of the home to be like, no, actually, this is a fundamental opportunity, an amazing thing, an amazing resource, an amazing knowledge that this woman has that she can lean into. Like, I put being a mother on my LinkedIn resume because I was like, there is freaking nothing harder than being a mom of my kids. Like, there is no other credentials that I could get that would prepare me for this, because it's just like left, right. Like you can't be ready for motherhood no matter who you are, you know? And I think that that's such a superpower of the moms of young kids that are running. And I really commend you for doing it because it takes a lot to do from you and from your family. And for every idiot who does ask you that question, I'm sorry. And for all of us who are moms alongside you, I just want to let you know that it's really amazing to see moms do it. It's really cool.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I totally agree. I think moms have superpowers. Moms together could change the outcome of every future election in this country if we get
Yeah.
it together, if we organize ourselves. Yeah, I've been asked, you know, what do your kids think about you running? Which is a fair question, but the question of like, well, where are your kids when you're on the campaign trail, and don't you miss them and all this? And I'm trying to throw that back in people's faces. And also the question of, are you tough enough to run, Annie?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sorry, I birthed 3 children and I nursed 3 children. I also went to medical school and did all those crazy things you have to do to become a doctor. But I think someone commented after I posted a video about this, are you tough enough, Annie? That what I should say is the question is more, am I empathic enough to be a leader? And
Yeah.
of course I am. Don't question my toughness. Let's question Lindsey Graham's empathy because
Yeah.
he doesn't have any. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're tough, if you're a strong man, if you're fighting, if you're using your power to fight for evil things, if you're not using your power to help the people who elected you, it doesn't matter how tough you are. And really, how dare you question the
Yeah.
toughness of any person who's brave enough to put their name on a ballot?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an interesting thing that I think even a decade ago wasn't as prominent, right? We look at the Republicans and the Democrats, and we look at the Republicans who pedestaled Charlie Kirk, who literally just said empathy is worthless and there's no value in empathy and it makes you weak. And then you look at Democrats like you who are saying, no, actually, my empathy is the one thing I'm going to really lean into. My empathy is what sets me apart. My empathy is actually what makes me a Democrat. Like, that's the
Right.
whole platform. Like, we actually care about other people. And I think it's never been so obvious of empathy versus kind of like self-serving interests in a way. And I think that's such a really cool way of leaning across the aisle and saying, hey, you may not agree with all of our fiscal policies. You may not agree on all of these things. And like, if you do have empathy in your heart, I think that's such a cool way that, especially as moms, we can look at other moms in the community and kind of welcome them onto our side. The left is so bad at when people coming over being like, oh, it took you forever, and like just being so mean out the gate. And I really think we need to have like open arms and welcoming people in and making it look fun, right? Like, we have to make being a Democrat look fun, because right now from the other side, they just look at us and we can't ever do anything right. We can't agree on everything. We're always mad. We're always fighting. And I think that's part of why, like, watching this resistance blow up inflatable frog out of Portland has been so fun, is that's the reminder I've been looking for, right? That's the reminder that the resistance can be fun, that it doesn't always have to be so heavy. So, what are ways that I'm sure it's not all the time, but what are ways that you can find fun in the midst of the campaign trail and fighting the resistance, all of that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it was Kamala Harris who said, we can't let them steal our joy. If they
Yeah,
steal our joy, then like we're going to forget why we're even getting out of bed to fight in the morning.
right.
And so we have to, I am very aware of like my own personal day-to-day mental health. And if I am finding joy in the work I'm doing on the campaign trail, in the hours I'm spending with my children as a mom, and in the work I do in the hospital, I'm always seeking out ways to find joy. And even though we find ourselves in such an incredibly urgent, unprecedented moment where the bad news is coming at us at a pace faster than you could have ever imagined, there are still opportunities to find joy in the day to day. And being such a busy mom right now, juggling the campaign and my job as a pediatrician and my 3 kids, it has allowed me to stay so much more present when I am with my kids, because I know that time, especially as we get closer and closer to the general election in 2026, is going to become harder to find. And so when I'm home, I'm really home. And we have to remember that we don't need to take ourselves so seriously all the time. The world is a very serious place. What we're fighting for is very serious, but we don't have to be so serious all the time. And, in between my run for Congress and my campaign for Senate, I found this new untapped hidden talent of mine, which was just using satire to mock mostly, white Republican elected officials, starting with Katie Britt in her horrific response to the State of the Union from the kitchen. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was, and I continued to do that because I thought it was a really effective way, number one, to bring myself joy, to bring other people joy, and to make points. Like
Yeah.
comedy and satire can be
Yep.
used
Yep.
very effectively to make
Yep.
really powerful points. And
Yep.
we have to remember that because we are full human beings. We can't just get downtrodden with the fight we're up against. We have to find joy in everything we do.
Yeah. That's so special. Cool. Well, I will let you go because people don't have a very long attention span these days. And that was wonderful. It's always fun to connect with other, like-minded people, brave, tough souls, if you will, right? Definitely tough enough for the race. But is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Any last words of wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, just first of all, thank you so much for using your platform, using your voice as a healthcare provider to combat the misinformation and disinformation, to provide real scientifically sound information to your patients and to other women out there. And then, if folks want to follow along, it's drannieandrews.com. Follow me here on Instagram and all other social media platforms. If you are a healthcare provider out there who's ever thought about running for office, do it. Please do it. We need you now. You are far more qualified than you even realize. Do the big brave thing. There's never been a more important time for us to step up and run. And even if you're not a healthcare provider, if you're just a woman, a mom who's tired of what's happening, tired of what you see at city council, at school board meetings, in your state house, just do it. Raise your hand
Yeah.
and run. You can do it. I promise you.
Yeah, lean in. And if it's not running for a big position, right, it's like finding the little things. It is, change starts at the bottom too. So it's little things like I joined our, school district sex ed advisory committee. And that's one of my favorite things I get to do because I'm like, I get to actively shape what sex ed culture looks like in our neighborhood. How fun is that, right? So there are really cool opportunities wherever you look. And so, Annie, thank you for everything you're doing. I really hope you win. I think so many of us are rooting for you, obviously. So always happy to be here. And hopefully we get to have another one of these as we get closer and closer to your race and pull you across the finish line together.
I would love to do that. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. Thanks, everybody,
Bye.
for joining us. Talk to you later.